again, some of this intro is going to be brief and high level, but still important, right? Like we care a lot about the work that we do every day. And so knowing who we are, who, you're working with and who's kind of behind the scenes at Scoop is important. And, one of the things that we always share is the founding story, right? The reason why we exist is, Babak in particular coming out of the automotive industry and really grappling with a lot of these challenges that all of us in the room are facing. How do we manage, EPC and O&M projects, teams, and processes spread across not only field and office, but in the case of, Babak's past life in the automotive industry, actually across continents, right? Trying to manage teams in Europe versus North America, down in South America. Ultimately, what we realized back in, the kind of 2014, 2015, 16 was that technology that exists today, office-based tools just don't extend out into the field. They don't give you the level of flexibility and mobile-first nature, right, that you need your crews and your technicians to have to go out and do those site surveys, installs, service visits. And that's actually why we call ourselves, we're in this category of MPMA. We're not a CRM, we're not an office-based project management tool, we're a mobile work process management and automation platform. And so, not only are we building the product to really serve the renewable space, the EPC and O&M space, but we're building a team that also, we really want to be able to speak that language, right? Become extensions of your team and partners of yours. And hopefully, some of you in the room can attest to that as well, having gone through a bit of the journey with us. Finally, we've had an incredible opportunity to also really prove the value in the industry with, the folks that we've had the privilege to be partners with on the customer side. Scoop's being used across over 15,000 job sites, across, not just North America, but globally. And of course, like, I'm going to come back to this point because it's deep within my belief, and our belief at Scoop is we care about every single company and team that we get that privilege to partner with. And so, we're excited to continue to grow this community of, solar teams, solar leaders, operational leaders that are really looking to take their operation to the next level. Finally, just a very brief overview. The tools that we're going to be talking about, right, are actually more than just Scoop. Scoop is our MPMA platform. It's what you're going to be using across the field and office. But you're also going to hear about Glue. Glue is a proprietary integration platform as a service, right? It's our product that we offer to our customers, where we can essentially develop fully customized, turnkey integrations between Scoop and now over 500 different platforms that you may be using for different things, like accounting, design and proposal is one that we're going to look at today. Looksee is an exciting new addition to the platform. We're getting ready to roll this out in the next month or two, which is a fully, drag and drop business analytics, dashboarding, KPI building module that leverages all of the data that's being captured in Scoop. And so we'll continue to start to preview a little bit of the incredible value of a business intelligence or a KPI tool that actually sits on all of the data, right? If you don't have the data, it's a shiny object. It might look nice, but it's actually not really giving you the reality. Our goal with Looksee is it comes after, having all of these first foundational pieces in place. Finally, we're going to come back to this slide likely in kind of this concept of, this is what that scalable operation looks like. Your entire field team is plugged in through a mobile first application out in the field. Your folks in the office have everything that they need, within one platform to be able to do all of those things in terms of project management, service, scheduling and execution. And then Glue is really connecting the edges of your IT tool stack to make sure that we eliminate as much manual handoff on each side as well. So again, I know we go probably kind of a mile deep into each of these slides, but I'm going to keep moving us forward. And we'll try and cover different flavors of this introduction in each of the 5 sessions. So you're kind of continuing to, we'll continue to peel back the layers and share more and more as we go forward. But for now, I want to, hand it over to Babak and give us a bit of a high-level overview of the industry and where we're at and where we're going.
Thanks, Tyrell. Super excited to be here. And go through this. And what I was thinking is it's probably useful, right, to do a little bit of a zoom out and just look at, what is happening in the industry. And, by all accounts, solar is at the cusp of a massive growth phase, right? I mean, lots and lots is happening. Last year, it accounted for about 43% of all new electricity generation capacity. And it showed resilience, right? In 2020, it sort of passed muster in the sense that despite the pandemic and all the disruptions, it still grew by 7%. And that's actually forecasted to double by the end of 2021 to about 13–14%. Of course, you have the ITC extension that's adding more fuel to the fire, probably going to increase, another 17%, basically give another 17% bump to the solar industry between now and 2025. And of course, we have, the Build Back Better situation happening and unfolding, and depending on how that goes, that could be an additional boost, right? And of course, as this is happening, opportunities are growing massively. On the flip side of that, the resources and the talent pool is not keeping up. It's shrinking. So labor supply is strained, and virtually, all the installers that we work with are looking to hire quality people. They're always looking for quality people. And if we look at the big picture for a moment, as it's shown in this chart, you can see that in order to meet the US clean energy targets by 2030, the solar workforce actually has to grow to about 750,000 people by 2030. That's more than triple the current number of people that are working in solar. But when you look at the current rate that these resources are being added, we'll only be able to get to about 400,000 by 2030, which means that we are basically going to be short by about half of the workforce that we actually need. One other thing that's happening in the workforce that's worth noting is that there's increasingly more and more people who are experiencing a situation where they want to work as freelancers and contractors. Sometimes that's by necessity, but often, increasingly often, that's by choice. When you do research, demographic research into the new generation of workforce, more and more of them actually prefer not to, have a steady job, quote unquote, and be able to switch between projects, be able to have more flexibility in their time. It's essentially an extension of the gig workforce or the gig economy that we've seen on the consumer side, now moving into the enterprise space. So you've got a workforce where talent is in short supply, and on the other hand, you have more and more kind of freelance gig workers that want to work in a different type of workplace. So the upshot of all that is that the team, the talent, and human capital that you all have in your companies is hugely valuable, right? It's a very valuable resource. And so it really is deserving of attention to make sure we deploy it intelligently and efficiently. So this other next point, kind of just again at a high level, it's not so much a trend, but just really more of an observation about the nature of organizational growth. And it's really something I felt worth highlighting and keeping in mind against this backdrop of so many of your businesses and operations growing and being in that kind of hyper growth mode. Essentially, the point is that when you scale any organization, complexity doesn't increase linearly, it goes up exponentially. And this is just in the math, right? You can see that in that picture on the side. That's just a simplification, but you can see that as you add more team members, more stakeholders, more contractors, more people basically in departments, the number of interactions or lines of communication between them goes up exponentially. And you can see that on the curve that's at the bottom left. And so the upshot of that basically is that as you grow your organization, there's going to be exponentially more opportunities for things to not go right? Things to fall through cracks and so forth. And so the result is that you really, in order to be able to grow your organization to its full potential, you need to get ahead of this curve and you need to find ways to flatten that. Otherwise, the opportunity or the organization just becomes a victim of its own success, basically just collapses under its own weight. And we've all seen lots of examples of that recently in the solar space. So unfortunately, when we look at systems of most solar companies, they're far from ready for this sort of rapid growth, in complexity. The systems are often siloed, they're disconnected, They're hard to access for even internal teams, let alone, outside contractors, channel partners, freelancers and so forth. And so the result is that as the company grows, they're not able to deal with this complexity. And ultimately it just reaches a breaking point. And counterintuitively, in some ways, complexity is not something you can solve by just adding more people. We've probably all experienced that. For one, it's not even easy to find the right people, but even if you could, adding more people, as we saw in that last slide, just increases the complexity, unless you have ways of actually plugging these folks into the right systems. And so, of course, when we talk to, solar leaders, project managers, operation leaders, they get this, right? They get this picture of exponential complexity, at least at a logical, cerebral kind of level. But as human beings, we are all wired to focus on the immediate, right? And what's happening right now. And so we typically tend to put this out of our minds because it's something that's out there, sometime in the future. But when you actually, take a deep dive into it, that's simply not the case. It's actually something that's happening every day, and it's hurting businesses every day. There's a real cost to it, basically, that's accumulating and has to be paid every month. And so over the last couple of years, one of the things we've done is work with a number of solar companies to actually try to quantify this, because we realize that unless you actually can show folks where these costs are coming from and that they're real, then it's just something that's out there in the future, and it's easy to just, sweep it under the rug, so to say. So when you add up all the inefficiencies and breakdowns in communication, repeat work, repeat truck rolls, all those things, they actually amount to about $1,400 per installation project. This is all for residential, but obviously it also translates into other types of projects. And about $150 actually per service visit. That's another side of this. And so when you put this in perspective, it actually is quite significant, right? Because a typical 6 kW residential solar project, has about $2,000 on a good day in terms of a profit margin. And even if you were able to save half of those costs, half of that 1,365 or 1,400, that will amount to about a 34-35% increase in profit margin. So it's quite significant. So even on a direct cost, day-to-day, everyday, bottom line kind of basis, this is something that's worth paying attention to, not to mention all the other things we talked about, like future impact of complexity on growth potential. So really it comes down to two things, just to kind of sum this up, is you need to be able to engage that workforce and manage them and deploy them efficiently, because they're hugely valuable. And the second thing is you got to get ahead of this complexity curve and control it.